Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for joining us for the student panel during WashU's Pre-Health Week. I'd like to kick things off by acknowledging the Indigenous culture of Missouri. Washington University and the city of St. Louis are located on the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Osage Nation, Missouri, and Illini Confederacy. And we honor them as we live, work, and study at WashU. My name is Morgan and I'm an admissions counselor here at WashU, and I am lucky enough today to be joined by a few current students who will be more than happy to share their experiences with their separate pre-health tracks with you. So this is the final session of our pre-health theme week, and so we hope we were able to tune in to our other sessions that we hosted throughout earlier days this week. We will be sharing the recording of this session as well as the other events from this week on our website. And today we will also be using the Q&A feature for the panel. So please submit any and all questions you have for our student panelists in the Q&A box at the bottom of our screen. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll jump right into our student panel. So we'll start with student panel introductions. We'll go in alphabetical order. So I think that would be, I'll have to do quick back. I think Anna, that means you will kick things off.
Hi, my name's Anna. I'm a rising senior. I'm majoring in anthropology in the College of Arts and Sciences, and I'm a pre-med student. I'm also from Miami.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ash. I am a current rising sophomore here at WashU. I'm majoring in biology in the College of Arts and Sciences, and I'm thinking of minoring in healthcare management. I am originally from San Jose, California, and I am currently on the pre-med track.
Hi guys, my name is Sadie. I actually just graduated from WashU with a major in biology, a minor in psychology, and I'm on the pre-vet track, and I am originally from Los Angeles, California.
Hi everyone, I'm Tina. I am a rising junior majoring in global health, minoring psychology on the occupational therapy track. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, and I use she, her pronouns.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all again for being here today. And it looks like we're getting questions already, which is awesome to see. But we'll start things off with a question that's probably on everybody's minds, which is how did you decide on your majors or minors?
I can definitely go ahead and answer this question. So for me, to complete the prerequisites that are required for vet school, it was going to be just a few more classes to the biology major. So it actually kind of happened by chance, but I really, really loved the classes in the biology department as well. So I really enjoyed taking them. But at WashU, you still have such a range of time and you have time to take classes that you may be interested in outside of your major. So that's how I ended up with a minor in psychology. It actually happened by accident because I just took classes that I thought were interesting. So that was kind of my thought process, but there's a lot of flexibility in the classes you can take at WashU.
For me, I knew that my interest in science would kind of be met with my pre-med coursework. So I wanted to do something that I could kind of get some more interest in other things. And anthropology, for me, I've always been interested in culture studies and different ways of looking at, for example, health or economics. So I've actually been taking a lot of classes like health issues and global health issues, and it both helped me with my pre-health, pre-med classes, kind of knowing the cultural aspects of health and those things.
Yeah, I actually, I have not declared my major yet. So right now I am thinking about biology. I'm not sure about I'm not sure which track. WashU does provide I think 5 different tracks within biology. There's biochemistry, neuroscience, microbiology, and other ones. And Personally, I just had a greater interest in studying biology over other sciences, and it's great because it does overlap with a lot of the courses. Um, like we already mentioned, a lot of the courses on the pre-med track, so it's also a little bit convenient in that way. But again, you could really major in anything in history, literature, and still be on the pre-med track technically.
Yeah, similar to Anna, I major in global health, which is basically underneath anthropology. It's a concentration in anthropology, and I really love learning about the social aspects and the cultural aspects of humans. So that's why I wanted to focus more on a health track that was more social than natural sciences. So that's why I chose occupational therapy.
Great. So our next question is, are there any special study abroad opportunities for pre-med or pre-health students? And I know we've been in the middle of a pandemic for the last couple of years, so you may have had some study abroad plans upended. So you can speak personally to your experience or just generally about some programs that you know of or are interested in.
Yeah, I can answer this. I will actually be going abroad to Athens, Greece this spring. And I'm very super excited. What's great about going abroad is that you can have classes abroad that counts towards your majors and minors. So for me, being on the 3-2 program, I need to complete all of my requirements by the end of junior year, and study abroad helps me with that. Being away from WashU's campus, I'm able to complete all those requirements as well.
I can say from experience going abroad, I went to University College London and I went with a biology focus. So I took biology classes and they, like Tina said, they did come back and count for the biology major. I know that every single major has a study abroad option as well. So even if you think you can't study abroad, you can. If if you think there's no place for you or there's not enough time, there is, I promise. And it's a really wonderful experience. I highly recommend it.
All right, so our next question is it overwhelming as a pre-med or pre-health student to be taking multiple science courses and labs per semester?
I can start off with this question. I think that one of the major shifts or changes I noticed from going from high school to college was taking fewer classes and going more in depth into each of the classes. For example, in the first semester, fall semester, I just took general chemistry actually as just my science course. And then in the spring semester, then I took the first like half of biology and chemistry. And I would say that like the workload is definitely a little bit more than what I personally experienced in high school. So, and maybe they also go a little bit more in depth into like specific topics in the classes in college. But I never found it incredibly stressful or overwhelming because of the number of resources available to students. So even though you are in kind of like these really large lecture halls, you're going to be meeting with fewer students in like smaller groups and maybe a graduate student or even the professor to talk or review the last week's content. This usually happens in like these smaller group discussions called recitation sections. And on the weekends, there are study sessions also for a lot of science classes like chemistry and physics and calculus. Called peer-led team learning or PLTL. So you basically meet up with like around six other students and a former student who got an A in the class, and you go over practice questions similar to the exams. And the student like also gives like some really helpful study tips and kind of like their own experience. So it's really helpful, and they kind of help you get through kind of like the more difficult course load, because that's just like how a lot of science classes tend to be.
I think for me, it was really important to gauge how much I could really do and how many classes I could really take. And it was really important to talk to my like pre-health advisor or talk to anyone in the pre-health like advising office and kind of like evaluate how much work I could really do in a week and how much work each class was. So I was able to kind of build my coursework around like which classes I would be okay taking together and which ones, like for example, I wouldn't personally be able to handle like taking orgo and physics the same semester. So for me, that was like the best way to really gauge like how difficult and how stressful my semester would be.
Yeah, so there's a lot of resources you'll have access to as a student, both within the classroom, right, having those recitation sections like Ash mentioned, but you'll also have, you know, advisors and professors and other students who are there to help you, because it can be intimidating. The workload is definitely going to be different from high school, but there's resources and support in place to help you with that transition for sure. So our next question is it possible to double major with a minor, all being on the pre-med or pre-health track?
I actually do know a number of people who did that. Like I said, with my minor, a lot of it happens by accident, by taking classes that just interest you, and then you just end up with some kind of extra major or minor. It is doable. It is a lot of work because certain, like the biology major, for example, the minimum requirements are like 60 something credits, and some majors are 20 something credits. So you have to do a total of 120 to graduate. So it's definitely doable. It might take a little bit more of your time than a major and a minor, or one major might, but it's definitely doable if you want to.
And to kind of elaborate on what Sadie mentioned, certain majors and minors will work better with a pre-health track, right? So a lot of folks who study biology or anthropology, because a lot of those classes overlap, but maybe doing something like architecture and then a minor in engineering and pre-health might be a little bit more challenging. So almost anything is possible. That's why you have your advisors, both your major, minor, and four-year advisors to help you figure that out. And they'll kind of walk you through to see what is possible. But to Sadie's point, it definitely is possible. So don't let that intimidate you in any way. Next question is, when do students have to declare their majors or minors by? And when did each of you declare your majors or minors?
Yeah, so you have until the end of your sophomore year to declare your major and minor. Personally, for me, I declared it the beginning of my sophomore year, after taking one full year of anthro classes and getting started in some of the anthro classes my sophomore year. I had a feeling that this was definitely the major for me. Just like Sadie said, I was taking psychology classes because I was interested in them. And after completing 5 classes, that was automatically a minor for me. So I just added it on my student portal, and I got assigned to my advisor, and I was done.
Personally, for me, I came into WashU knowing pretty much that I wanted to do anthropology. I did wait a little bit after taking a few anthropology courses just to make sure, but I did declare, I think, at the end of my first year. But I think you can also declare and then you could change your mind afterwards as well. So it's not like a set in stone thing either.
Okay, our next question is, what opportunities are available for students who want to study public health at WashU? Or maybe you could speak to how your classes have incorporated maybe public health elements, even if they aren't explicitly public health courses.
A lot of my classes in anthropology, because of my interest, have some public health aspects. Like, for example, one of my favorite classes was transnational reproductive health issues, which was really interesting, and like the political economy of health and things like that. But I know you can also, there is a track where I think you can do your undergraduate degree in 3 years, and then the last 2 years you can get a master's in public health from the social work school. So I think that is another like very like public health focused thing you could do.
Oops, sorry. I actually have a couple of friends who are doing this really cool ampersand. They tell me they're studying public health. It's called Medicine and Society, which is a really interesting course because they study basically like the history of health and illness, and they examine like kind of like healthcare systems, and they get to like interact with their professor like in a really small group setting. And that's just like one really thing that I thought was unique about WashU. Like these first year programs that are offered to students, there are ampersand programs, which are um, sometimes like 4-year programs where you stay in the same cohort or the same group of students, and you kind of like get to know each other, and you learn a lot together. You can, I think also there's some study abroad opportunities for some ampersands. There's other kind of like first year seminars, but back to like public health, that was just like a really interesting ampersand some of my friends were taking.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly mention what Anna said about the 3-2 program for public health. So we have that in social work and occupational therapy. And what's great about the 3-2 program for public health is that there are no prerequisite courses. So you can just apply for the 3-2 program without having any required courses, and the GRE was just recently like removed, so that is not required as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways you can incorporate public health into your time as a student, whether it's officially through the 3-2 program or just taking ampersand classes. Our Brown School, which is where our public health master's program is held, is one of the top 20 public health programs in the country. So it's a really strong program, whether you are, again, pursuing a master's or just utilizing those resources as an undergraduate student. So our next question is, what is the best part about WashU pre-health programs? And how did pre-health, pre-med or pre-health advising help you during your time at WashU?
I have to say it's really nice to have the support from the university, especially in a pre-health track that's very small like mine at WashU. I still had really amazing advising and felt really supported, and that's something that was really important. I also am part of a pre-health organization, or I was the president of the Pre-Vet Society. And so we were also the students themselves, the pre-vet students were very supportive of one another and kind of created another support system. So that's something that I really love about WashU in general, is there's so much support, whether that's advising from your peers, from your professors, they all want to see you succeed. So I think it's really nice to have that support when you're pursuing a future career. Even with the Career Center, they do really wonderful work with placing you in networking events or placing you with jobs or internships and stuff like that.
I can definitely attest to like what Sadie said. I think that my favorite part about like the pre-health program, not specifically the program, but it's definitely the culture of students here. I find that it's like incredibly collaborative. So I feel very comfortable asking my peers for any help that I might have, and they feel comfortable asking me. And it's that really nice environment of like kind of like sharing our knowledge and like what resources we all know. Like my friends just recently told me about like research labs at the medical school, and like they're working at right now, and like kind of directing me to like ways I can get involved myself. So I really appreciate like that aspect of the student body. And I think also, like Sadie mentioned, the Career Center is a really invaluable resource for students. I think so. I used it for them to check my resume actually recently, just so that if you're applying to internships, they can also give you general advice. They helped also pre-med students like with practice interviews, I think, before applying to medical school. And in general, they just provide a lot of like moral support and everything for you to find the kind of like internships and opportunities like in St. Louis or elsewhere in the country.
Yeah, and bouncing off of what Sadie and Ash were saying, I think for me as well, it's the community aspect. And even within the larger like pre-health community, you can always find smaller communities like the pre-vet community. And for me, I'm actually on the exec board for the Minority Association of Pre-Medical Students. And I love that community. It's so great. And there's so many things that we do for each other, resources that we advocate for and provide for the members. And it's a great like student body.
Okay, so our next question, slight deviation off of our pre-health focus questions, though you can make this about pre-health if you want. What is your favorite thing about WashU?
Ash mentioned this, but definitely the people, the community, especially, and like even with Anna said about the minority, the MAPS, that's what the acronym is, the group chat. For students on the pre-medicine track, I love like all the communities that WashU can offer. And it's just really nice that everyone's here trying to support you, trying to, be there every step of the way that you for all of your interests and all of your passions. So yeah.
I think this has already been hammered home, but the student body is insanely supportive. But something that really struck me even before I attended WashU was how passionate people are and how they really pursue their passions in such a enthusiastic way. And I really wanted to be one of those people who was so passionate about something that they just went full force into it. But at the same time, you can have this huge variety of interests and still follow those passions through and follow them through. So I think that's really amazing about WashU is you have that opportunity, and the student body is just so passionate about what they love.
Yeah, and I think outside of just the student body, like the professors are like that as well. They're so passionate about what they teach, and they're always there to like answer questions about their research, why they got into the fields that they got into. And the school does so much for the students as well in like events and things, and makes you really feel like you're in a home, basically.
I might just add like a little point about the student body also, that I really like how there's like this really cool diversity here, and that everyone has like different backgrounds, and coming from the West Coast, it was really nice to see like people from the Midwest and like kind of how they live differently, their own experiences. And I think what I really like about our classes here at WashU is that a lot of times they're smaller and discussion based, and we kind of can use our own perspectives and experiences in the discussions. And I feel like I learn a lot that way from other people about kind of like, I don't know, on topics like big topics like race and socioeconomic status and everything like that. I feel like I've learned the most from my peers in those discussions. So that's also something I really loved.
Fantastic. Thank you all for sharing. I know that's a common question we get, but it's always nice to hear every student has a different take on what their favorite thing is. So our next question, moving back into pre-health, is have any of you worked in a lab, or more generally speaking, how do students get involved in research opportunities? This can be class related or extracurricular as well, because I know you guys do research in class too.
So I personally have not been involved in research yet. It is a plan of mine to be involved in research. I know WashU does have like a lot of different paid internships that you can apply for to get involved like at the medical school. But at the moment, over summer, I am staying with a couple of friends, and um, a lot of them are doing research at the medical school. One is in the pediatrics department, the other one is in the oncology department. And I can say that definitely there are a lot of different ways to be involved in research in actually any department. There is like research opportunities. But of course, because the medical school is so like accessible to students, it's like a 10-minute metro train ride away. It's a really, really common area for students to just gather and do research. Um, and like I mentioned, there is like a WashU website for undergraduate research. So you can kind of, again, talk to the pre-health advisors here and talk to your four-year advisor, and they can direct you to those links where you can find research. A lot of times students just kind of like email professors or doctors at the medical school, and they kind of discuss, like if you email a couple, maybe someone will get back to you and they'll talk about the potential to be like an undergraduate research assistant in their lab. So there's a lot of ways to be involved in research.
I was not involved in bench research, but I actually did do some research at the St. Louis Zoo, which is actually a 5-minute drive from campus. So I ended up doing animal welfare research at the zoo, and that was a lot of live observation and stuff like that. So it's not all bench research, but there is a wide variety of research that you can complete at WashU. And like Ash said, there's a really great Office of Undergraduate Research that can connect you with people, or reaching out to professors. Almost all of our professors do research of their own. So if you find something really interesting that they're doing, you can hop onto that pretty easily because they always love having more help in their labs. So there's plenty of research opportunities. I think at any given time there's like 3,000 research projects going on at WashU. So there's always something going on that you can get a part of if you want to. And also, I know a lot of students stay like over the summers and stuff to get paid to work in their labs and stuff like that. So if that's something that interests you, definitely a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, and as Sadie mentioned, excuse me, the Office of Undergraduate Research is a great resource. Feel free to poke around their website if you're looking to get into research. It's definitely something you can do as early as your first year, especially if you're already thinking about it. But there's lots of different ways you can incorporate it, whether you are pre-health or not, into your just everyday academics. So speaking of everyday, our next question is it difficult to balance academic and social life as a student on a pre-med or pre-health track?
I'm definitely going to say no, because not only are people really supportive of you academically, but people are so friendly here, just insanely kind, and everyone's kind of wanting that balance. Some people choose to have more balance than others. Like some people really want to focus on their academics, and some people want to focus more on social life. But either way, you get a really good mix of both. And I mean, depending on your workload, unless you are taking 21 credits of pure science, I think it's pretty. You still have downtime to get dinner with friends, or go to the zoo, or go do something fun. There's plenty of balance.
Yeah, I can definitely say that it is definitely achievable to have like a work-life balance as well. But it also depends on like the student, like because in college, also another thing I noticed is that you have a lot more independence, and there's not that kind of like structure you had. Like you go to school, you go home, and you relax, and then you do work. It's not like that. It's like you have 3 hours of classes sometimes in a day, and then after that, you have to kind of figure out when you're going to do your assignments on your own. And the professor's not necessarily going to remind you, do this assignment or don't, or projects in general. So it's really up to you to kind of like figure out your own managing style that like works for you. And you kind of like learn this throughout the year. Like no one's perfect at it. I'm definitely not. So I like probably got actually like the hang of it like in my spring semester more, after I kind of like went through my classes more and more, and I figured out like what kind of planning schedule worked for me, like using a planner or using Google Calendar. Anything really works. So you just have to find what works for you.
Great, thank you both. So our next question, we kind of touched on advising and what that looks like, but we have a specific question about it. So do each of you have only one advisor, or do you get multiple advisors depending on your major or if you have a minor? And then what has your relationship with your advisor or advisors looked like? A couple questions in there.
This is one of my favorite questions, actually. You get correct me if I'm wrong, but you get an advisor for every major, minor, study abroad research that you complete at WashU. So there's a lot of support. That's just something that I love about WashU in general. You have so much support, and your advisors are really there every step of the way. My 4-year advisor, so you get one of those as well if you're in the College of Arts and Sciences. My 4-year advisor was also my pre-health advisor, so she was knowledgeable about both general matters of the school and with pre-vet stuff. And she's actually writing me a letter of recommendation for vet school right now. So I got to know her super well. She's a lovely, lovely person, and she helped me so much. And I really got to know her because she was there for me when I needed her. When I needed her to help me through picking classes or talk through like anything, they're there for you. And we also have a program in the arts and sciences called Dean of the Day, where you can go, if you have a general question, you can go to the dean that's kind of on call and ask them your question, and they're always there for you. So I love the advising at WashU.
I just wanted to say that I probably used Dean of the Day like 3 times my first week of freshman year because I had no idea how I wanted my classes to look like. And when my first year academic advisor was not available because she was a professor, so she had classes to teach, I would go to the Dean of the Day and just let them help me. And they were all really nice. And I was able to like keep in contact with one of them, even though they're not technically my 4-year advisor. I still have their information and I still talk to them.
Yeah, so as has been mentioned, you do get an advisor for every major and minor that you have, along with if you are on a pre-professional track, you'll get an advisor for that as well. Have your 4-year advisor. There's a whole lot of advising happening at WashU. So the relationships you have with them just depends on what you want to have with your advisor, whether it's something like Sadie, where you just want to have somebody's close relationship, or you just want to stop in and ask a question. It is up to you. So our next question is a little sentimental here. When did you realize you wanted to pursue your pre-health track? So tell us a little bit about that.
I can go again. I feel like I'm dominating this whole conversation. I have always wanted to be vet since I was a little kid. So I actually came in pre-health, but I was undecided on everything else. So I didn't know what clubs I wanted to join. I didn't know what major, what minor, nothing. I did know that I wanted to be pre-vet. I know people who have been the opposite. They know exactly what major they want and then kind of add on as they go. This works for a lot of the pre-health professions and the tracks. It's just, you can add on as you go. It doesn't quite matter as long as you get all the prerequisites done or the experiences that you need. It doesn't matter when you do it, but if it's something that you're interested in, there's also a lot of information out there that to explain kind of what WashU's pre-health. I'm sure like recordings from earlier this week and panels that have been happening this week have addressed this, but there's a lot of information out there of what that might look like. And so you can explore it before you come, or you can just come on in and see what you like and go from there.
Yeah, I also came in knowing that I wanted to do pre-med. I had done a lot of volunteering at my local children's hospital back home during high school, and I just loved it so much. And I loved all the discussions I had with the doctors that were around me. And I just realized that this is like what I wanted to do, and this is where I wanted to work. So,
I personally decided that I wanted to pursue the pre-med track, like also before college. but I call myself like also like open to other things as well because I haven't had that kind of like clinical experience yet in a hospital that can kind of like really confirm with me if I want to do like pre-med or maybe like research because I am personally interested in like kind of like hardcore science. I don't know how to describe it. I like studying like chemistry concepts and biology concepts, but being pre-med of course is involving like your interest in patient physician interaction, and that's something that also definitely interested me. And I actually took a course in spring semester called the Art of Medicine, where we did learn about like a lot of like different interactions between patients and physicians and kind of like different philosophers' takes on it. And that just kind of like also made me more interested in just kind of like becoming a doctor or the different ways and different like applications that doctors do to interact with their patients, and how they can also still be involved in research. So it's really interesting in that way for me.
Yeah, just similar to everyone else, I was interested in the health track, pre-health track. Um, and I was considering occupational therapy, but it wasn't until my sophomore year where I took a one credit course called Intro to Health Professions, where basically it was just like once a week class where there were guest speakers who had a specific profession in health professions such as PT, OT, audiology, ophthalmology. So I was able to learn a lot of about different other fields that weren't just like doctors or the pre-med track. And that definitely reassured me that I wanted to do OT because I was able to learn more about like career opportunities that weren't just inpatient care. I learned about opportunities in schools, outpatient, and other things like that.
Great, thank you all. So our next question is about the Med Prep program. So can you talk about your experience in the Med Prep program if you've taken those courses, and what would you say it is like?
I did Med Prep 1. I haven't done the second part yet, but it was really not so much eye-opening because I took it later than most people do. So I knew a lot about pre-med and being a doctor beforehand. But for someone coming in and not knowing those things, it would probably be pretty eye-opening knowing the like little details of what being a doctor is. And the professor is really straightforward with like not sugarcoating the profession or the career. And I really appreciated that.
I actually also took Med Prep 1 last semester, and it was actually taught by a professor at the medical school, and I think he's on the admissions committee as well. So he kind of like gave us like an inside look on like how medical school like kind of looks at applicants and the different also specialties that like medical students get to kind of explore, and all about like the admissions process of medical school, like the different kind of like stages, the different um, ways you can be involved in medicine itself. Like maybe you want an MD, but also you're interested in research, like kind of how the MD PhD works, or also a lot of his own personal experiences, like working as a doctor. And again, like Anna said, he does not sugarcoat like the profession. He really does try to give you the truth about like the different ways and kind of like struggles, but also like really positive aspects of pursuing medicine.
And just for like a general overview, if you haven't heard of our Med Prep program, it's a two-part class bundle, I guess you could call it, for pre-med students. That first half, as Ash and Anna mentioned, really goes in depth about what it is like to be a doctor, everything that comes with it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then the second part is a shadowing opportunity. So you actually shadow physicians in the Barnes-Jewish Hospital, which is on our medical campus. And so you can get like that firsthand experience. And for some folks, it further confirms that that's the work that they want to do in the future. So you can go on online and look up the program. There's a really nice comprehensive overlook of like what it is and what each of the courses entails. But it's something that our pre-med students do take when they are at WashU. So our next question is, what kind of health-related experiences did you have before applying to WashU? And any advice for prospective students planning to apply with that in mind?
So I personally, oh, I'm so sorry. I personally did not have like specific health related experiences or extracurriculars before applying to WashU. I did like participate in one research competition in high school, but it was not something really big, in my opinion. So what I would say on that side is that there's not really something you need specifically like in high school to show that you're interested in medicine, because maybe like we're all like kind of young still and we're all still trying to figure out our own interests, and I wasn't even 100% sure in high school that I wanted to do pre-med. And at that moment I was just more interested in general like service to others and community service, and I was in Boy Scouts and like those kinds of things were kind of like my interests at the time. But things changed and I became more interested in medicine after studying more biology courses and learning about like kind of physicians' day-to-day lives. So yeah, that's kind of like what happened for me.
Yeah, like Ash said, you really don't have to have like any pre-health experience to go into college in the pre-med, pre-health track. But I did, like I mentioned before, volunteer for about 3 years at Miami Children's Hospital. And I loved it. It was great. I did some work in the emergency room with like patient care interaction mostly. I was part of a team that would care for the children and make sure to like reduce the stress of the parents, and that was pretty great. And I know the St. Louis Children's Hospital has a lot of volunteer opportunities as well and volunteer programs.
I can't speak to the pre-med experience, but I think in general for any like professional graduate school, medical school, dental school, vet school, whatever it is, there's no such thing as a perfect candidate. They really want to see what makes you you. And I think that translates into what you do as a student, whether that's in high school, whether that's in college. But college is really a time to explore your interests. I think that's what they care about more than anything, is that you are like a unique person and you're well-rounded and have interests that really drive you. And I think you don't need to know exactly what those are in high school. I think college provides plenty of time for that. That being said, if you want to go work in a hospital in high school, go ahead. That's fantastic. But it's nothing that there's no formula in general.
Okay, our next question, kind of in a similar vein, is how was the transition from high school STEM classes to college math and science courses? And did you find the rigor to be a big adjustment? And you can be completely honest.
So I think I did talk about this a little bit before, but I definitely found the change from high school courses to college courses to be not really drastic, but there is definitely a difference in that I feel that I learned a lot more different topics than I would have expected in, for example, chemistry, because maybe in high school chemistry we learned more about like um, the chemistry side of chemistry, if that makes sense. And then in college, we learned a lot about the physics of chemistry in the first semester. And I think that's like a large difference I noticed in terms of like the content that maybe a lot of people aren't expecting. And that's totally fine. The professors know that. So they kind of like teach it in this really interesting way that they kind of wield it as a story about like, they call it the story of the electron, because a lot of like what we learned was about atoms. And it was just really interesting to learn about like the history of experiments in general. So I would say, yeah, the content will be different and maybe college courses will have more application based like exams, like in my experience, but the professors do these things, like these little things that I really appreciate that help me kind of adjust to the difficulty. They provided like a lot of practice. So before every exam, they would give last year's exam for practice so that you can gauge the difficulty and whether you're prepared or not. They record all of the lectures so that you can rewatch them as many times as you'd like. So that was a really helpful resource as well. And there's a lot of like mentoring hours and like these things called residential peer mentors who have their own hours, and you can go to them to ask any questions that you may have in terms of like the practice questions or whatnot, or any concepts. So I just found all of this to be incredibly helpful for me understanding the new material that I was learning, and of course reviewing the stuff that I might have already learned in high school.
I have to be honest, I had a little bit of a different experience coming into to college as Ash did. I really struggled my first semester at WashU because my high school was way too easy and for me, and coming to WashU, it is an academically rigorous institution, and I didn't realize at the time, but it really pushed me, and I am so grateful for it. It pushed me to learn how I study best. It pushed me to seek help. It pushed me to kind of reevaluate what I was doing right and what I was doing wrong. And so I really had to work hard to get to where I was. I ended up with, good grades in the end, but that was because I really had to work hard at it. So I think it really depends on you and where you're coming from. And but I mean, like Ash said, there are a million resources. Even as a senior, I took physics, and I really struggled. I had to get a peer tutor to help me because I was really struggling. But even then, even after learning all that stuff, I'm just so grateful that I was still able to seek help and find what works for me in order to make the classes the most manageable for me. So definitely rely on your resources is my point, but also you learn a lot about yourself through these challenges as well.
Yeah, I kind of had the same experience as Sadie. It was pretty hard for me the first like semester, couple semesters to really adjust my like study habits and study techniques and how much extra like tutoring I was gonna need for my classes. And I think one of the most like eye-opening things that I really went through was just like it's okay to make mistakes and for things to not always end up the absolute best, as long as you like learn from it and learn that maybe this type of studying isn't the best for you for these types of classes. And it ended up being great as long as you really look at yourself and see where you're going wrong and ask for help and all these things. It doesn't have to be easy, and it doesn't have to stay difficult either.
Thank you all. Yeah, it's definitely a transition. So all these resources in mind, I think, are great support systems. I loved how you wrapped that up, Anna. I think that's a great summary of just college in general. So kind of shifting focus to outside of campus stuff, but have you engaged in any health-related opportunities in St. Louis? Or just generally speaking, what has your experience been like as a student engaging with St. Louis?
I think I mentioned before that I did research at the St. Louis Zoo, which is amazing. I actually did a community service program called WAGS, where you go downtown and you walk dogs at a local animal shelter. So that was another kind of related thing to my pre-vet. But I also ended up getting a job at an animal hospital. So I was working part-time during my senior year to further my career. And I found it really, really valuable. And I also found it pretty manageable to do with my course load. And I know a lot of people find jobs elsewhere too, like in the hospital or working at a vaccine clinic or something where there's a lot of opportunity for that. And it's definitely manageable. I love St. Louis too. So there's plenty of ways to engage with St. Louis. I mean, we're called Washington University in St. Louis for a reason, because WashU is it's really integrated into the St. Louis community. And there are a lot of programs, particularly in, public health and around the St. Louis community that you can also get involved with, or, whatever your interests are.
Bouncing off of that, I think there's also a lot of different clubs and organizations that work with underprivileged communities in the St. Louis area. Like, for example, I worked with this group of students, and we helped out at a clinic that was for people that didn't have health insurance and were of low socioeconomic class. And we helped give them nutrition and like healthy living advice while they were waiting for their doctors, so they wouldn't just sit there and wait without learning some things and talking to us about their habits and any questions they had or any advice that a general doctor might not have time to give them. And there's other clubs that go around and do like blood pressure tests for homeless people in the community. So there's a lot of things you can do to help the St. Louis community and work with the community and not just stay in the quote unquote WashU bubble.
Great. So moving, let's see, find the next question. Yes. So moving back to campus related things, what clubs or student organizations are there for pre-health students to participate in? And can you discuss any of your own experiences in these types of student groups?
So I can talk about a club or organization that I'm currently involved in. It's not like designated as like a pre-health club, but it is like typically aligns with like what a lot of pre-med students like, one of their interests. So I'm actually in GlobeMed, so it's a global health club on campus, and we basically have a lot of discussions about health inequalities in the world and how, kind of like us, like as students in positions of privilege, can use our privilege to help them in our community or in the world in general. We fundraise and campaign for a Ugandan organization that we partner with, Uganda Development and Health Associates, and we help them basically, we donate money to help fund for their education and healthcare services. And we have some of our members as part of a team go to Uganda over the summer to help them with service projects that they may need help with. And that's kind of like the general gist of what the club does, but we do a lot of also really interesting and fun activities as part of our weekly chapters, where we all basically try to learn about each other and try to do these community building events that can help us just basically, become more interested in global health or helping disadvantaged communities.
I can talk a little bit about MAPS, the Minority Association of Pre-Medical Students. We do a lot for the student body and the community as well. Like, we do some mentoring and connect our club members to mentors, and including like peer mentors at the undergrad and also in the med school, because they also have an SNMA junction like organization that we work with. We do community service projects like hosting students from local like high schools and talking to them about college and showing them around WashU. And we go to a local pantry and help out in that. And we also connect students with faculty and facilitate like faculty relationships and invite doctors to have panels with us. Like, last semester, I think we had the former chief of surgery come and talk to us, Dr. Adams. So we do a lot of stuff, and it's pretty great.
And if you're looking for a specific group, other than the two that Ash and Anna just talked about, we have a whole database called WUGO, which has all of our student clubs and organizations that you can access. And you can do some exploring to see kind of what pre-health programs or just any clubs and organizations that exist that may pique your interest. So with the time that we have remaining, we'll have each of our panelists answer this last question. It's the classic, why did you choose to attend WashU?
I can start off. I actually chose WashU because I immediately knew I wanted to come here once my admissions officer came to my high school and kind of gave the whole spiel about WashU and its amazing academic programs, and also, you know, describing this St. Louis in general. And I just thought that it would really match like what I was looking for, because it was a collaborative environment, and definitely like a contrast to the competitive one I have at home. And that was the one that was like the really a strong thing that pushed me towards WashU, and definitely talking to current students here as well. Kind of like what they did in their own classes to kind of like help them, and the resources also convinced me. I think we talked a lot about the different kind of research opportunities already, and the proximity of the medical school and everything. So yeah, those were all also reasons, and the beautiful campus, of course.
I had a similar experience. I also first started being interested in WashU when an admissions officer came to my high school and talked about it, and just everything sounded so great. The community, the way she talked about it, and the classes, the professors, everything. And what really solidified it for me was actually when I went to an interview for WashU that was hosted like locally where I lived, and getting to talk to some of the professors that were actually present and had gone to like be there to talk to and see some of the students that were interested in WashU, and talking to some of the students that were there. It just seemed like a community that I felt like I could really be a part of and enjoy and have a great education as well.
Yes, very similar stories to Ash and Anna. An admissions officer came to my city, and that's where I found out about WashU, along with a lot of students from my high school going to WashU, and me reaching out to them and talking to them about their experience and how they said that WashU was such a collaborative, community engaged university that you could do a lot. There's a lot of support, and honestly, I think that just sold me. I didn't have the means to visit campus. So it spoke a lot about the university, how they were able to come to me, even though I couldn't come to them. And they definitely did a lot of reaching out to me through emails. And so I really appreciated that. And once I realized that I knew that this was going to be a potential school, I was flown over to WashU to actually see campus. And I fell in love with it immediately as I stepped foot, because I could just picture myself going to all the classes, going to the dining halls, and participating on these clubs. And so I definitely felt that when I was in person.
I chose WashU. I mean, when I visited, I was struck by how passionate people were about everything that they did. And I really wanted to become one of those people who was so passionate about what I loved that you just can't help it. I think everyone here is so supportive, so nice. Everyone here wants to see you succeed, which is something that really feels good when you're trying to achieve something hard, which is, attain a bachelor's degree or a bachelor's and a master's degree. When you have that support, it just means the world, and it makes the process so amazing. And as a graduate of WashU, I'm really going to miss it. I really, really am. It was a fantastic experience. I don't regret it for a single second, and I wish I could do it all over again. So that's why WashU.
It's a perfect way to wrap things up. So thank you all to our student panelists for sharing your stories and perspectives and insight as to pre-health and what it's like at WashU. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. We hoped you were able to enjoy the session and will continue to engage with us this summer. I'll have my colleague Tia drop the link for registering for our other theme weeks that we'll be hosting this summer if you want to continue to explore more academic areas of WashU. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us in the admissions office. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have. And with that, we will wrap things up. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your week.